Okay, so we're going to do some Q&A if you have some questions. I'm going to invite all of our presenters to come. Jeff, are we just going to have them stand up here? Is that what we want to do? Or just be close, or how do you want to do that?
Here on the front row.
Okay. So Jeff and Chris are going to be here so that everybody can hear the question. If you have a question, they'll move to you, and you can voice your question on the microphone. And then all the presenters, if you'll just be close enough to where you can get to one of the mics, or I'll hand you this one, and we can answer the questions. That would be great. Would anybody have a question that you would like for us to answer? Anybody? At the back there, Jeff.
I didn't quite get down. What is a medical underwriter's annuity?
I think that would probably be Kevin. Medical underwriter's annuity.
Is this on?
Yes.
The term I use is medically underwritten annuity. And the principle behind that, any pension or any annuity that somebody owns and they want to have an income paid, it's generally paid over their life expectancy. So the age at the point in time will determine how much the monthly check is, along with the deposit. When you medically underwrite and somebody's in poor health, they have a shortened life expectancy. So for an example, if you had a life expectancy of 20 years on a typical annuity payout, for a $100,000 deposit, you might get $5,000 a year for 20 years guaranteed. But if you had the same $100,000 deposit and you had a 5-year life expectancy, then it'd be about $20,000 a year. So when you've got somebody who is in a facility that's in poor health and they're afraid they're going to outlive their resources, then sometimes a medically underwritten annuity can create a high enough payment that's guaranteed to last as long as they do, even if it's beyond their typical life expectancy. Does that help you?
Okay, great question. Thank you, Kevin. Who else? Anybody else have a question for us today? Yep.
What if your family doesn't have the type of dynamic like your family, and there is great resistance to discussing any arrangements, or does anybody on the panel have a suggestion as to how to address that?
I'm sure several do. Let me say something first. One of the, because we have more than one side of the family, okay? And so I'm experiencing both cultures. We have found third parties are very helpful to communicate, independent third parties, not a weapon, as somebody said they were.
Yeah, the weapon.
The weapon.
Most of the time, there's disagreement. Most of the time, there's stress. Most of the time, there's fear. And an outside party, whether it's someone from your church, whether it's someone from your support group, whether it's an aging life care advocate, whether it's a social worker or a therapist or somebody on the outside, can help do what I call consensus build. But that's the norm, because everybody's scared.
Yeah.
And especially if there's a memory impairment. The
Yes.
hallmark with a memory impairment is no. When you're losing your mind, you can't express, I don't want any change, because I'm not going to be able to adapt to the change. So a person with a memory impairment will say no because it's unfamiliar to them.
Right.
The only thing I would add is, and as a last resort, is that's a lot of times why people end up in guardianship situations, because it gets to the point where the power of attorney can't do their job because the person is declined cognitively to the point that they won't let them do their job. So that's kind of a last resort, but that is a lot of time why you end up in the guardianship land, is because they're so resistant. And again, having a designation on who you want that to be, if you have a difficult family dynamic, sibling-wise is usually the case, then you don't have to go and argue about who that will be.
And let it also be, I mean, obviously, the context of your question would be in the sense that you're dealing with an aging parent or sibling or spouse or something. More importantly to note, from all of the answers that we gave, is don't let that exist for your children. Because when it's talking about your life, you're the one who creates the moment. And it doesn't matter it was a little awkward. It still is. It's awkward for me to talk about it. Doesn't come natural. But we force ourselves to talk about it. Betsy's great at it. Betsy makes everything funny and sarcastic, so it works for us. But if you're the aging parent, you create the awkward moment and say, we're going to talk about this and you're going to hear our plans whether you want to hear them or not. We're going to make this public. I don't think there should be any surprises for family members when they open the will or when they find out what you've done with your money or what's happening at your funeral. That is not the... Guess what? You have no opportunity to redeem that. You're gone. So don't surprise anybody. Explain it to them, encourage them, and help them participate in that process. No surprises. And mostly, we are the ones who need to be responsible. Somebody said something here. I wrote down this from my own personal experience. And I don't deal with it near as much as all of our experts do. But the kids who fight are the ones whose parents said, my kids won't fight. We have healthy relationships. They are. The parents who go, oh man, this is going to be a train wreck, they fix it. It's the parents who say, oh, my kid, they'll never fight over money. My kid, let me tell you something, there's no child who won't fight over money. Every child will fight over money. So and they'll fight over how the parents are being
They
taken
fight
care of.
over power and money.
Say
So
what?
sometimes there's no money, and if it's no money, it's power.
Power, yeah.
I want to do it. Mom wanted me to do it. Well, guess what? Mom probably told your brother, I love you just as much. So they think, but they will spend $50, $100, $150,000. They're not fighting about any money, and it seems crazy, but it's like, no, I want to be in control. So
Yeah.
you have the control too.
So don't say, my kids won't fight. They'll be in my office, and I'll send them to their office. Don't say that. Who else? What other question? Anybody? We don't need to force them if they're not. We just wanted to be available. One more at the back there, and then one over here. Go ahead. Chris, why don't you go first over here? Is that Linda?
Linda. With the veterans benefit to spouses if they're in a assisted living, is there an income limit or a asset limit to tap into that?
There's a way to tap into the VA benefit. The VA benefit asset limit is $80,000 or less. There is no income limit to the VA benefit. If you're spending your entire monthly income on care, you're eligible for the benefit. What I try to tell people, particularly people who are married, is the combination of the Cameron Group for the filing of the VA benefit and an elder attorney who understands what to do with assets is you can use the VA benefit as long-term care insurance. So the time to look at that would be now for down the road, because a couple $100,000, $300,000, $100,000 isn't enough to pay for both parties. So you can understand the VA benefit now to even know how to incorporate any other financial vehicle that you have to pay for your care.
Back here.
As the child of the elder parents, both myself and my husband are in medical field, and neither parent wants life-sustaining measures to take place. So in the event that I find them in a situation that they have passed, what am I supposed to do at that point? Because we don't want emergency medical intervention. Do you call the police? Do you call? And then also, what do we need in place that the law enforcement then doesn't look at us to say, well, why didn't you do anything? I have a coworker that this was something that happened to. She and her mom are both RTs. The grandmother lived with them. She was 90-something, cancer, et cetera. They found her, and the police came, and it was treated as a crime scene instead of a passing.
I love this question, and the answer is, and I'll make it available here at the church, there is a do not resuscitate form, and this is how some of these laws are so crazy. This form is printed on yellow paper. You post, okay, stand up back there. That's it right there. It's a do not resuscitate order. It's recognized by all law enforcement, all ambulance, you call 911. You call 911, you called me, I'm gonna fix you and get you to the hospital. But if you have that form and your heart stopped beating and you're not breathing, they will honor it. If you do not have that form, all bets are off because 911 was called. I'll make that available. You got yellow paper, print it out for everybody. Do it, a physician has to sign it. And what you'll do is you'll have the physician sign 3 of them, because if you use one, they go to the hospital and never gets back. So just make a stack of them for your use at home.
So that's a great question. I didn't know the answer, but when she said it, now I know because Betsy took care of it. Jeanette lives in her home, and they have one there. We have one in our home as well because Jeanette spends time at our house. So if something were to happen there, there is a do not resuscitate. We don't want any life-saving measures. She's ready for heaven. Why would we possibly extend this, right? So we so have them wherever they are if they're in multiple places. And I still think you call 911, medical attention shows up to help, but they see the form and they don't intervene.
And the other trick with that is if you order a hospice consult and you get them, it might be premature, but that's another way that people understand, don't just knee-jerk me to the emergency room.
Okay, great question. Anybody else?
Question,
Yes.
where do you keep that form so when they come to get you, where do you keep
We keep ours on the refrigerator in our house.
Everybody, all 911 people look at the refrigerator. All of them. Put your emergency numbers up there, put your medical history up there, put everything. They go there
Here.
first.
See, here I thought we were unique, and
Oh,
we're
no.
just like everybody else. I guess we fit in that 70% like everybody else does, right? Okay, anybody else? One more in the back row there, Chris.
What is a live-in will, and why is it when someone goes to the hospital, they automatically ask you to sign a live-in will? My friend told me that a live-in will is not what it's made out to be. Can you explain that?
Sure. A living will is basically, do you want those life-sustaining measures? Do you want, it gets more specific in the document itself, but that's really essentially what it is. When you go to the hospital, if you don't have one, they want to know the answer to that question. So they'll have you do one when you're there. If you already have one, you can say, I don't need to execute this. I already have one executed, and present it to them. So that's why they ask you to do it, because if you don't have one or don't have access to the one that you have, they want to know what they're supposed to do if they get in that situation. You sign it, it'll give you different options, like, yes, I want life-sustaining measures. Yeah, I want life-sustaining measures, or no, if I'm in a vegetative state, I do not, I don't want to be on the tubes, I want to be taken off. So you're telling them, like, if I get in certain states, what you want done.
It's basically instructions to the medical community or whatever hospital or whatever you're with, what measures to take to sustain or save your life.
It's like one page. It's
Yeah.
very simple. It's just it gives you like 3 or 4 options.
But the medical community has taken an oath to extend life. And for them to step away from that oath, then you need to say, don't extend mine anymore. And you can tell them to what level. If you don't have that, then they're going to use every means possible to save your life.
And if you don't have that, then you go back, then you get, there's no spouse, and say there's 3 kids and they can't agree on it, becomes quite a problem, which is
Right.
another reason to go ahead and do it
That's right.
beforehand.
It's a decision that you can make that prevents your children from having to make one of the most horrible decisions, especially, like you say, if there's disagreement between children. One wants to keep you alive, one wants to let you go to heaven. And the conflict of that, don't do that to your children.
When they disagree on that, it rarely ever mends the relationship. That's like a lifelong
Right.
break.
That there is, as strongly as I can tell you, because it's not my authority, there is clear biblical mandate. As believers, we should not put our children in that position. There's no reason for us to have to do that. So Don't do it. Do not put your children in a position where they have to answer that question without you answering it for them. Okay, anybody? Yeah, Chris?
I am, I think, clearly in a different percentile of the generations here. I'm here with my aging parent, but as I'm thinking about preparing for my children, I have 3 children, 7 and under. Say something happens to me on the way home today. What happens to my kids if I have not designated something for them? Assuming my husband and I both pass.
Yes, in that situation, Department of Children and Families is going to come in and make that decision and figure it out. That's why, again, like, I know I sound like I'm repeating myself, but if you plan in advance, from a financial perspective, you can have a trust that until they're of a certain age, you have somebody else managing the finances. You can designate who you want to be their guardian when you pass away to take care of them. So you can plan for all those things, but if you don't, then you're going to leave it up to DCF or a court to do it for you.
So if there's not a legal document, if I've told someone or they know what, if there's not a legal document, then what you just explained happens.
Correct.
Yes,
I mean,
okay.
now, if you leave your intentions and there's a way for those to be honored, then of course they would probably try to do that, but that's not going to be a legally binding document that says that's what has to happen.
Okay, anybody else? Hey, I'm so thankful for, oh, you got one? Yeah, okay. Hey, Bonnie.
What does one do? You go to the hospital and you're in typically good health. You have no idea if you're going to go on life support or something like that. And I know I don't want to be on tubes for the rest of my life, but when you go in for a normal procedure, do you still need the living will?
Most of the time, the medical community will require it of you. It's like the paperwork you have to fill out on the way in. They'll put it in front of you and have you tell them.
So you can say you still want to be revived
Yes.
at that point.
Well,
Yes.
there's 2 things I would want you to know. The living will is if your condition is terminal, deemed terminal by 2 physicians. The DNR, do not resuscitate, is a doctor's order. And the doctor's order, not everybody, but a lot of people think when they go to the attorney and they get all their legal docs that they have a do not resuscitate order. A do not resuscitate order is a physician's order that says, I want to be brought back to life if my heart stops beating and I stop breathing. And that's an order, and they will ask you or ask an advocate, and if you go to the hospital, please have someone there with you that knows you. A sibling, somebody, be there at the hospital to help you get your wishes known, because the living will is very narrow, and it's for a terminal condition. So the healthcare surrogate that you get would be the one that could make the decision should you not be able to communicate. Like she wants to do not resuscitate order, she doesn't want to do not resuscitate order, then can guide your medical care. But the living will is only when you're terminal.
Very interesting. Yes, Reagan.
No, it's a doctor's order. In my mind, a DNR, and I'll tell you this, when you're in your 80s, 99% of the time they don't work. 99% of the time. 2 to 3 ribs break, lungs are punctured, damage is done. So it's a very important conversation to have in your 80s. In my mind, the conversation, like Danny's been talking about, should be had every year to say, how do you feel? I've had a 102-year-old that wanted to be resuscitated. She's rare.
Right.
She's rare. But you want to let them know, because the hospital, without it, they got to do it. And it is devastating to watch.
We good, Jeff? One more here.
Yeah, I'd like for someone to speak on what is the responsibility of adult children if both parents have expired and there is any debt owed. Are those children responsible for those debts?
No, what will happen is a probate will be opened, presumably. You open a probate, and there's a period where you have to give notice to creditors. And then the creditors, and I'm going to give you a general answer, there's certain specifics for different things, but in general, the creditors will then have a period to file claims. And if they don't file claims in those periods, they're barred. If they file a claim in that period, then there's, again, a certain order of things that are paid first. You have your funeral and your medical. Then, in an order of claims, those claims will get paid if there's assets to pay them. Now, your home, because it's homestead, is a little bit different. One of the reasons that Florida is so great, your homestead protection, homestead property actually passes outside the probate. It doesn't come into the probate, so it's protected from creditors. So the creditors wouldn't be able to, if you still have that homestead protection, it can be lost in certain instances, but if you have that protection, they're not going to be able to take the home. So that's a general answer. There's a lot of intricacies to it, but that's general.
So run up a big debt and then, no, I'm just kidding. Leave them that. Okay. Hey, thank you. Would you help me thank, and Holly and Paul, you guys stand up here too. Would you help me thank all of our presenters? And Betsy, would you come up here? I wanted you all to meet. Our journey is largely led by my beautiful wife, Betsy, who came to be with us here for just a few minutes and had no idea I was going to ask her to stand up here with me.
I'd have looked cuter had I known.
You'd have looked cuter if you'd have known, yeah. This is a journey we're walking together, and as a couple, we're seeking to honor Christ and honor her mom especially as they walk through this, and Betsy provides a lot of the care for her mom and a lot of the decisions that they're wrestling through. Of course, I try to be a supportive and quiet husband, and Betsy's the one that's navigating that with her siblings and her dad to try to provide care for her mom. And I'm so proud of the way she's led our family, and she's taking care of her mom and honoring her and being a great example to our children of how they can take care of us one day. So we're building that expectation in. And Doug, she does have one question for you, and that is, I don't know what that question was, but I'm going to stage one for you. And that one, she wants to know if you'll make sure I get buried in my running shorts. That's what she wants.
No, I asked Doug when I saw him today, I said, if I kill my husband, do I call you first? He said, yes.
We love Doug, and he's been a great friend to us, and thank you, Doug. My promise is good with you. So, hey, would you help me thank my sweet wife for everything she's doing?